only a modest change in occupational structure. Now, in occupational structure, nanglole change chungyore, change the modest chat digore, modest labing dikabla, we can say satisfactory change labshane digore, okay, or we can say moderate change labshane digore, okay. Now in this there is a table and two years are given. One is 1950-51 and 2017-18. Okay. Now in this we have to see and we have to go for comparison. Okay. Between these 2 years. That in occupational structure changes kari chung yume. Okay. Now sector is given here. Primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Percentage of workforce. Okay. Now 1950-51 in primary sector 72.7%, and in 2017-18 percentage has come down to 43.8. Okay. Secondary sector 1950-51 it is 10, whereas 2017-18 it has increased to 24.7. And in all chingidi maudrodwa secondary sector nangole. Tertiary sector nangole it was 17.26% in 1950-51, 2017-18 nangole 31.5. Again, this has gone up. Okay, so now we can clearly see the change in occupational structure. Okay. Now, the description is given here. It's a very simple description. Period 1950-51 to 2017-18, percentage of workforce engaged in primary sector has declined. Manyor Chinwa 72.72% to 43.8%. Di nangshin secondary sector nang workforce ki percentage di maur chinswa. Likewise, tertiary sector nang maur chinswa. Okay, so digi kari shu cheyungudu shift from primary to secondary sector is noticeable. Then, but still, Indian economy the agricultural economy chik chadigore rather than an industrial economy. Okay, so historical experience shisun letagi na mixed on the developed countries obviously workforce the shift chayore from primary sector to secondary and tertiary sectors. The dini nangole sector secondary and tertiary sector nangole lega chingi di manga yore. Okay. Shift the kazu greater cha yona rwa di shison growth the development di achieve greater chetu gore. Okay. But in India nangole experience digi kari deungore sana it shows dismal picture like it. So dismal labim dikabla we can say bad picture. Okay, that in the Indian experience we have seen just now. Karchadigidu primary sector the supreme cha chadigidu and in employment raksa ki source tewa chik chadi ki tuwa ane population mount che thadung ya still even if ruwa changes chung yo na ya ruwa but still much dependence the primary sector ki kala chadi ko re. Okay, so this is with regard to change in occupational structure. Then now we have to go for change, or we can say now we have to see growth and changing structure of employment. Okay, now under this one tangshu dila growth of employment and GDP, gross domestic product. Okay, now we have to see what is given here. 50 years of plant development have always aimed at expansion of economy through increase in national product and employment. Wah. The India gi nanglo le obviously India ki economy di developed so di chadu gore. Okay, so 50 years of plant development digi aimed di kari chadu gore sana economy di expansion. Economy expansion di kandis chagi yume kesi national product rwa di mangru tugu yuna as well as employment di mangru tugu yuna and development chik achieve che to gore. Okay, now period 1950-2010 GDP of India grew positively and was higher than the employment growth. So period 1950 to 2010 padu India ki GDP di grow chayore, increase chayore ruwa in comparison to employment growth. Lata yungdi kabla ruwa GDP growth di manga chadi borda then employment. Okay, there was always fluctuation in the growth of GDP. GDP now fluctuation le di gore. Guess what? That means up down ruwa increase decrease lani chadi gore. But employment di grew at the rate of not more than 2%. Employment di increase chayore ruwa but not more than 2%. However, in the late 1990s, employment growth started declining. Takari chungsha employment growth di ma decrease chadwa and reached the level of growth that India had in the early stages of planning. So starting gi kabla planning 5-year plan the start chair what to kabla employment growth ki level chikyor wa. Okay, starting gi kabla employment growth level chikyor wa, employment khazus yume chikyor wa. Din nang shinchik ane late 1990s nang le chadiyo rehla gorta. Okay, during this year the gap between the growth of GDP and employment was widening. So didi kabla ruwa 1990s la gor wa ta period this chikten wa GDP growth ki gap da employment korani ki gap chikyor wa di ta widen chero wide saru to gore. Okay, the this chikla manzuki kari lab gore sana jobless growth lab gore. Okay, now comes an important concept called as jobless growth. What is the meaning of jobless growth? Jobless growth refers to a situation when the economy is able to produce more goods and services without a proportionate increase in employment opportunities. Jobless growth now le khari chungo ore sanarwa. Economic growth chungo ore. Economic growth la byungdi kabla GDP la gorwa. GDP di mauru to gore. Okay, so GDP mauru to gore la byungdi kabla the economy nanglo le goods inere, services inere, dinzo manga produce chi gore la gore. But employment mauru to gore be la kabla employment din nang shi ruwa mauru to gore ma re. Employment opportunities nzuruwa GDP nangshi ya increase chako mare lago. So that is called as jobless growth lago. Okay, now we see here the jobless growth the kandis chikla la merwa. A brief description on jobless growth. Jobless growth lamna kandis chikla la kore. The growth chikwa the economic growth la refer chikwa. Okay, so economic growth chungore the khadu chungure obviously GDP diya phardu kabla. Case where economic growth labkutwa economic growth labna GDP ya pharki na GDP ya rise chiki na then economic growth achieve chetu gore. Okay, so GDP the production of goods and services la gorwa the increase chana. It implies increase in the level of output. So as I said, economic growth na la kari chungore output. Okay, goods inere, services inere, then so increase chaware. Right? Increase in the level of output is achieved in two ways. The output demand in order to increase the output any output increase chaktan khani yore. First one the greater employment. Greater employment chigi na chikche. Nibadila through better technology. Dini ki kharchigi resana output level the increase chawar. Okay, output level the increase chagi na GDP the rise chawar. GDP the rise chagi na economic growth the achieve chetu war. Okay, so economic growth lamna dirda GDP growth dilala war. The poor countries India nangole where there is staggering unemployment. Staggering labing di kabla we can say shocking. Unemployment. Yorwa economic growth becomes meaningful only when it is associated with greater opportunities of employment. So that poverty is combated. So economic growth the meaningful kadu chegresana only when economic growth the it is associated with greater opportunities of employment. So economic growth digi ruwa and greater employment opportunities chi create chetupyona ruwa then economic growth the meaningful cha degwa relagor and greater opportunities of employment create chetupyona and poverty de kari chetigre fight chetupurwa. But what is happening in India is, unfortunately, Indian economy is experiencing GDP more through technology than employment of labor. As I said, here, level of output increase, it is due to greater employment of labor latane. Chagitwa, the India now la kari chungo resana, India now la GDP, ya, mauru to war. GDP increase chagor, economic growth achieve chetu gore. Yene the khandes resha through technology. Technology pejetane. Okay, rather than employment of labor. Is that clear? Okay. So this situation de la karila wars na jobless situation or jobless growth la war. So jobless lagara wo mare. Okay, yine ya growth achieve chetu gore. Okay, economic growth chik achieve chetu gore. Is that clear? Okay, now see here. Jobless growth is a situation when the level of output in the economy tends to rise. Our production de mauru dogore due to what? Innovative technology pejutane. Without any perceptible rise visible awash. Okay, rise in the level of employment. So jobless growth khandis chila labingutu production mauru dogore ani production mauru dogoya ke reason the technology pejutane chadu gore rather than any employment of labor. Okay. So this is about jobless growth. Now see here, jobless growth leads to chronic unemployment. When we say chronic, long term la kota. Okay, long term unemployment chati kore even when there is a rise in GDP. Now next one. Why are we relying more on technology and less on employment? So rely, depend lagwash. Okay. Reason dikharesha the MNCs multinational companies. The dinzo companies they are specialized in achieving high growth through efficient technology. Ta kunzo gemang chakari peche tangore technology peche tangore rather than using manpower. And technology dilatte ne growth di achieve chetu ta. Okay. Now see here. India ki growth process is being increasingly hijacked. Hijacked labing the kabla to take control by MNCs chadi gwar. Okay, so MNCs in achieving what? Growth. And the growth the technology efficient pejetane rather than employment marutane. Okay, so jobless growth chaswa dinanglole. Okay, now see here. Period 1951-2000 growth rate of GDP the rising from 3.6% to 8% per annum. Chati gore employment growth rate it has come down from 1.5% to just about 1%. Okay, so such situation is termed as jobless growth. Now see here, a diagram is given here. Whatever we have seen just now, description is given here. Okay. Now, a brief description on this diagram. Now, this is the diagram. Okay, now we'll just have a quick and brief description on it. Now, the period between 1990 to 2012. Okay, that means from here, 1990 to 2012. This one is a significant one. From here to here. 1991 economic reforms introduced Cheswa, and this has changed everything in India now leta because of economic reforms rwa changes shukchung bu shu ji chung yore din nanglo le tisha jo variables rwa variables ni de yore one is GDP re dwa GDP di this one di cha di gore employment di wa di cha di gore din ka variables rwa din nanglo le remote nanglo le karisho chi gore sana GDP growth rate yorwa has taken an upward. Yes, the GDP growth rate thing the kabla ya par ya this macha ya par like this fluctuation lan da ji ding la she so chung yore. Okay, whereas situation of employment growth rate has seen major fluctuation while going down. The dinang shi employment yor watanda employment dinang le fluctuation chung yore. So initially dinin tang the kabla increasing chegidwa ta dinin ma chasa ji karicha yungudo ma decrease rawa right so debadu decrease che then increase che and then finally back decrease che rawa and then increase this chinaya fluctuation che ya chungduwa GDP growth rate the increase chayore 3.4% in 1991 to 2012 so that means from here to here by the length 3.4 labing the kabla so we have here 3.4 ne and a ya increase chadwa until up to 2012 now tagiyona de badle dwa right so again dinamle fluctuation this chungwa increase then remain same then again increase then decline okay employment nangole growth rate jigorwa the 1.5% 1991 to 1.12% in 2012 same here so then only we have to see from here to here so 1.5 then finally 2012 now let becomes chati 1.12 okay between the period 1999-2005 so from here here to and 2005 that means the period in the employment generation rate was at peak since independence that is 2.28 so dela time the kabla employment the at peak the comes rate 2.28 cha with corresponding GDP growth rate the kazuchagudo the nanglola the year so GDP rate the 6.1 cha the gap between these two variables is maximum between the period 2005 to 2010 the korani gap chikwa employment che as well as GDP korani gap chikwa the maximum di see here the period the kawa ligitu 2005 2010 di chadi employment growth rate the nyungshe di 0.28 de la chagitwa okay then GDP di mangshe di chadi okay so korani ga gap chikwa gap di pe karidu period di nangole white shoe gap di okay so the gap di la karila gore it is called as jobless growth is that clear okay so this is just a brief description on this diagram chadi gore all right okay then changing structure of employment okay now in this we have to see what is this changing structure of employment means Now you have to use here this table. India is an agrarian nation. That means agriculture. Kala dependence di mga chadi gore. Likewise, population mangbochik rural areas nanglole live chigore and they are depending on agriculture as their main livelihood. Okay. Developmental strategies in many countries, including India, have always aimed at reducing the proportion of people depending on agriculture. The lungba yarke tanya ki strategies yorwa lungba mangbo chik nanglo le including India lagatwa. The developmental strategies ki aim di karichati ko oresana people mangbo chik agriculture ki kala mixe tanda India nanglo le they depend on agriculture wa. The developmental strategies gi aim di karichati ko oresana agriculture sector ki kala dependence di ma nyoro tanya chati ko. Okay, that in our table chiktuwa we will see sector wise chati kitwa. So see here the effect on different sections of workforce due to growth pattern of employment and GDP with the help of table 7.4. Now we will see this first. Sector is given primary sector, secondary and tertiary sector year 72-73, 99, 2011, 2011 and 12. Wow. Now see here 1972-73 nanglo le 74.3% workforce the primary sector nangle engaged chati gitwa. Okay, that the which declined to 48.9 in 2000. The delay nyoro chindwa as well as di nanglo le the year di nanglo le nyoro chindwa. Okay, so that means what does it shows? Shift from farm work to non-farm work. So population agriculture sector nangole rwa dependence di nyoro chindwa, and that means farming sector ne the non-farm lega la pa shift chedewa di dingore. Okay, similarly secondary and service sector nanglo le when we see workforce rwa. So see here secondary sector 10.9, 99 2000 naule increase chadwa, dinashi 2011 12 naule increase chadwa. Tertiary sector naule increased chadwa. Right? Okay. So this one is employment as per the sector wise in 3 different periods. Okay, now next one is casualization of workforce. Now we have to understand what is the meaning of casualization of workforce. Okay, now see here the process of moving from self-employment and regular salaried employment to casual wage work is known as casualization of workforce. Tadi naule casualization of workforce nangole wa khari chungors the movement move chigre self-employment so business yugyo la gorwa dinangshia regular salaried employment mi shemba chik gi hire che any regular logic pay chigidwa. Okay, then this chik lega ne rwa the move chene any casual lega chigi na dila casualization of workforce la war. The here dikaresana rwa casual workers yorwa dinso manga dugorda increase chagor. That means population manga. Now they are becoming casually hired workers. Now see here, another meaning. Casualization of workforce refers to a situation when that is situation when the percentage of casually hired workers, casual workers labgor wata diga percentage di mangru in the total workforce tends to rise over time. Okay, what does it mean? Total workforce yorwa on din nanglone rwa ta min mangchia karichati koresana ane casual workers chati ko. Casual workers di ta mangru gore. Okay, self-employment di member che, regular salaried employment dia member che. Now kunzo karicha koresana they are turning to casual workers. Dila casualization of workforce labgorda. Okay, so that means total workforce ne casual workers ke percentage di mangru na, it is called as casualization of workforce. All right, now see here. 1972-2012 period di nanglole rwa shift chungore self-employed and regular salaried employed rwa laga dinene shift chene ta kari chigore casual work chigore. The table did not look here. Status state wa self-employed, regular salaried employee and casual workers labudwa 72-73 nangla self-employed 61.4, then 52.6, then 52 ma decrease chadwa regular salaried employee 15.4, 14, then 18 bit increase chadwa casual workers 23.2, 32.8 and 30 length. Now see here, self-employment, it continues to be the major employment provider. The self-employment the so business setup change in the laga che de la borwa. Tadi mangshe employment provide chigore. Rwa ineya it has declined from 61.4 in 1972 to 73 to 52 in 2011 and 12. The new shindwa regular salaried employees nangole these mato increase chayo mare see that this chati ke dwa di nangole initially 15 then decrease then increase rwa this mato chagimendwa. The casual workers, casualization of workforce labing the kabla casual workers la refer chigitwa that the casual the increase from 23 to 23.2% in 72-73 to 30 in 2011-12. So then this increase chadwa casual workers the increase chadwa. All right, now what we have to see is casual workers increase chadwa di nangole. The reason kari latene increase chayo me lagor. Okay, so reasons for increasing casualization. Casual workers ki population di mauro chindwa. The reasons the self-employed small and marginal farmers are becoming casual workers. The dinzurigdi casual workers chagorda reason kharit latenere due to low scope of earnings in agricultural activities. Dire agricultural activities nalole earning cheki scope tita pet nyuro. Done rwa and konzo shift chiborta to casual work la. Rwa displacement of workers from large industries in urban areas has shifted the status of regular workers to the casual workers. Taya large industries now workers mang puchi displaced chagidwa makes it in the urban areas now le. Wa the industries now lega chinge peche di regular workers chadu gorda. The displaced chayung di kabla kunzo lega mewa chagidwa. So lega mewa chayung di kabla ane they are turning to casual workers. Kunzo casual work chigorda. So the slow growth of employment in the organized sector is also the reason for the workers taking up casual jobs. Organized sector, unorganized sector la ni yore. Wa the organized sector la bi yung di kabla. Organized sector na lo le employment raya pe khabo chati gore. Chida nganzu ke la bi yung di kabla organized sector la bi yung di kabla dila tsik shemba formal sector la bshine dire. Shungi sector chati gore. Wa so dinzo na la employment raya di pe khabo chati gore. So di yung di kabla workers nzo lega kari take up chikitu casual jobs. Wa then as I said, tingsan rawachina organized sector na lega raya di pe khabo reda. Wa ta lega mara yung di kabla obviously kunzo lega kari cheyo gore casual work cheyo gore. Then next, increase in demand for casual labor is expanding construction, trade, services activities in rural areas also led to casualization of workforce. That makes it under construction, trade, service activities, rural areas lega chinge labor kandis chi koyores na casual labor koyore. Okay, so demand shuk chumbo shugo yore casual labor ki. So dilatenaya casualization of workforce chungore. Okay, so this is the reason behind increasing casualization.